So metta is loving kindness or empathy, literally feeling into or feeling with. So it's the capacity to understand what other people are experiencing from their point of view. That's empathy. What this must feel like for someone else. Imagining what somebody else is going through in the circumstance that they've found themselves in. Placing our energetic, emotional bodies into that space to just take a pulse on how are you? What's it like for you right now? I can imagine what this feels like for you. So it's like we can shape shift in the heart mind and take on the perspective of others. Meaning the edginess of opposing other people's perspectives, even if they don't align with our own, is softened. Because we can imagine, A, that they have Buddha nature. So even if there's layers of distortion and danger around it, that at some space there's a soul. There's a Buddha soul. And so whether or not we're in agreement or in alignment, that we can put our own parts and perspectives aside for a moment to just get a feel for other people's opinions. This is metta, but it's also the kind of genuine wish that's at the heart of the bodhisattva vow. So of all the 4 divine abodes, it's said, and we'll spend the most time on metta, that metta is the most important. It's the most fundamental requirement of a light heart and of peaceful states, is to actually genuinely wish others well. Because we are miserable when we have hate or anger or resentment towards others. It's like the poison arrow gets turned back around on us. So it's deranging to have a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of judgment, a lot of fear. The only way to have peace in our heart is to have a lot of love and acceptance and tolerance for others. There's just no way around it. But where metta really comes in genuinely caring for others, is not just in genuinely caring for other lovable people. Or because you're with your family or your loved ones or your children. Like, metta isn't really practiced when you're practicing it for someone that you deem worthy of your love. That's not a practice, that's just innate. That's utilitarian, that's instinctive. We're tribal species. We have a large limbic system, emotional system. We can love and care for our own, and that's not metta. That's just basic human instinct. So, I think you know where I'm going with this. Like, it's not very difficult to have love for your own children. Most people manage that. It seeps in. Metta takes root when we make no distinction between any being. So here's an inquiry Aya Kema has offered in measuring our level of metta. She says, how do you feel about your own children? And how do you feel about other people? There's the work you have to do. If you see a small child who has fallen off a bicycle and is crying, it'll be natural to pick it up and console it. That's metta, but it's not difficult metta. The difficulty lies in generating that feeling in one's heart towards all people. And then she goes on to say, most, in her kind of German swagger, most of whom are not terribly lovable. She says, we think we're justified in not loving those who are not acting in a way we consider proper. But ourselves, we don't act in the right way all the time, so why expect it from others? Why expect perfection out of others if we can't do it ourselves? So there's levels of metta. We're going to go through the 3 levels of loving kindness. You can kind of just mark what comes natural and where your growing edge is. But before that, I just wrote a note as I was at the airport the other day that one of my favorite activities for developing metta is when I'm at the airport or in some public space where you don't really want to be, and you get to observe just the passing of so many souls, most of them slightly deranged on their way to catch a flight, or they're texting, or they're running late, or they're budging you in line, or they're yelling at the flight attendant, or whatever it is. Like, seek out the most, here's another Lojong saying, seek out what repulses you. So when I'm sitting at the airport, I like to watch people pass by, and just sometimes you have to really squint hard, but you're seeking the Buddha in everyone that's coming by. And sometimes it's harder to see than other times, but a trick there that I've found that's helpful, particularly when I experience, as we all do, in communal, tribal, there's a safety mechanism in us that can be repulsed by others that some of our parts deem dangerous or just displeasant. So when that occurs, or a little bit of loathing or hatred or any of these weeds that we're trying to unroot, when you're really having to wince hard and try to find the goodness in someone, envision them as a 7-year-old, or even younger, as a little boy, where distorted parts haven't seeped in quite strongly enough. And those younger years, no baby is evil. They're so close to source. So you just try to seek out the inner child in your challengers. And that is next level awakening. Yeah.
Can I share
Please.
an experience that I recently had with
Please.
Metta, and it was extremely powerful, and I think it dissolves the fear, and it also dissolves the separateness of beings. I was in a grocery store shopping, and a man came in extremely disgruntled and started screaming and making a huge scene, and the security guards came and he was shouting, and I looked at him and I was just started in my head the chant, may you be safe, may you be well, may you be free from your suffering. And at that moment it was just I almost wanted to cry or pause and hold him, because I was he is in so much pain right now. It's not, everyone else felt scared, and security guards were there ready to act, but it was the dissolvance of fear of someone else. That was so powerful.
Yeah, thank you. That's the medicinal view. And it's the same thing I said yesterday about going into retreat with resistance. The more resistance we have to opening, but then we still stay open, there's just such a greater potential for, I keep using the word evolution, but that's what seems pertinent. That's in evolution, to be able to stay soft in the face of somebody with a lot of hard edges. Yeah, that's a practice. Okay, so 3 levels of metta. Basic metta, or listed here as goodwill. Primary requirement for living in community, or for the cohesive force of a country. We need to rely on the fact that, the mailman is going to deliver the mail, and farmers farm our food, and all of the ways that we interrelate and codepend on community. There's just an essential assumption normally that neighbors have goodwill for one another, that there's not naturally malicious intent in a community. And so it's like an essential requirement as a pack animal. So it's not like a deeply evolved level of metta, right? It's a level of metta we can mostly manage. But when it breaks down, that's when we have chaos. That's when civil wars erupt. That's when there's deep societal turmoil. And that's also when it starts on a micro level, so when personal relationships break down, when that level of goodwill, like I'm actually not interested in your well-being anymore. When that's dissolved, chaos erupts. And it's dangerous. So we have to ensure that at all times we're at least operating on that basic level of metta, like I don't want any harm to come your way. Okay, so then it goes a layer deeper, and we have from goodwill or just neighborly basic metta to friendship. And we feel friendly towards certain groups of people, right? Like our kinship, our kind of tribe, like our sisterhood. We feel that kind of metta that's much deeper than metta for our neighbors or for, the waitress or whoever you're sitting next to in traffic, which is another great practice. May you be well. We get to practice that in LA a lot. But friendship isn't really metta either. It's not real metta yet either. Being friendly to your friends. So Ayya Khema, I told you, she's like the reigning queen of the divine abode. She says that friendship is actually the near enemy to love. Because in friendship, what's embedded in friendship is affection, which you could also call craving. And we tend to think of affection as something positive, but it has a lot of attachment in it. So there's there's like this attachment we get to our friends, to our colleagues, to our tribe, to those who help us, to those that we live with. And that attachment can create a lot of aversion or resistance towards the idea that that person might be lost to us. And it goes back to the Lojong second aphorism of slogan 1, everything's impermanent. So there's a lot of fear and attachment in the potential. There isn't always, I should say, there's the potential for a lot of fear and attachment and a craving and identification in friendship. And this is where you see like toxic qualities like the KKK banding together, or whatever else it is, that there's a tribe of strongly like-minded individuals that band together with such attachment that there's repulsion to anything that's not that. So friendship creates in some cases, a vacuum that diminishes our tolerance for people we wouldn't name as our friends. And so a lot of identification happens in this level of metta. So there's a potential for suffering. It's not pure metta. There's a muddiness to it. There's like a stain to it that can create a lot of damage. Just like a basic example that's a little bit less extreme than the KKK is the type of metta that a father can have for his daughter, where there's a lot of pride in his legacy and there's a lot of fatherly love for his daughter, and there's so much identification that this is the man who's the father of this girl. And so when that girl behaves in a way that isn't what he deems a healthy performance or demonstration of the family unit, then everybody suffers. And she's made to feel like she's failed, and he's lost the thread of his own pride and identity. So you see that kind of metta going sour in family dynamics. That's why, family units, as we age and evolve and add more people into the mix, has the tendency for the most interpersonal drama and difficulty, because there's that level of attachment and identification. So there's an expectation for them to behave a certain way. It's not a pure, open, unconditional love in a lot of cases, not all. This is just I'm justifying why this isn't enough love. With friendship too, it's like we don't want to lose our friends and we treat them well, but if they don't treat us in the way that we want them to treat us, it's like she's gone, right? Like we don't maintain friendships that aren't serving us. I'm not saying that's wrong and that we should keep friendships that aren't serving, but it is a look at that's conditional. It's really conditional love. And if loved ones don't love us back, we become desolate, we become depressed, we're bereft, we're grieving. Like if they leave us, then all love is lost. But metta, shunya, the open sky, is love for all of existence. It's theoretical. I haven't quite embodied it fully yet, but the idea of leaning into this love won't disappear, no matter what you do. I'll still try to see the Buddha in you.